والبحر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان رب المشرقين ورب المغربين فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يخرج منهما اللؤلؤ والمرجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان وله الجوار المنشآت في البحر كالأعلام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يسأله من في السماوات والأرض كل يوم هو في شأن فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان سنفرغ لكم أيها الثقلان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يا معشر الجن والإنس إن استطعتم أن تنفذوا من أقطار السماوات والأرض فانفذوا لا تنفذون إلا بسلطان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يرسل عليكما شواظ من نار ونحاس فلا تنتصران فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فإذا انشقت السماء فكانت وردة كالدهان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيومئذ لا يسأل عن ذنبه إنس ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يعرف المجرمون بسيماهم فيؤخذ بالنواصي والأقدام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان هذه جهنم التي يكذب بها المجرمون يطوفون بينها وبين حميم آن فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان ولمن خاف مقام ربه جنتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان ذواتا أفنان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما عينان تجريان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما من كل فاكهة زوجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان متكئين على فرش بطائنها من استبرق وجنى الجنتين دان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهن قاصرات الطرف لم يطمثهن إنس قبلهم ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان كأنهن الياقوت والمرجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان ومن دونهما جنتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان مدهامتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما عينان نضاختان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما فاكهة ونخل ورمان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهن خيرات حسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان حور مقصورات في الخيام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان لم يطمثهن إنس قبلهم ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان متكئين على رفرف خضر وعبقري حسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان تبارك اسم ربك ذي الجلال والإكرام صدق الله العظيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا، من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. ويقول الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون ولا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم أولئك هم الفاسقون لا يستوي أصحاب النار وأصحاب الجنة أصحاب الجنة هم الفائزون. All praise due to Allah, we seek His aid, we seek His forgiveness, and we seek refuge in Allah from the evil of our own souls. And I bear witness that there is no God except Allah, and that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a slave and His messenger. Whomever Allah guides cannot be misguided, and whomever He's allowed to go astray can never be guided aright. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says an approximate meaning in the Quran, O you who have attained faith, remain conscious of Allah, and let every human look to what He sends forth for the morrow. And again, remain conscious of Allah, for Allah is fully aware of all that you do. And be not like those who are oblivious of Allah, and whom He therefore causes to be oblivious of what is good for their own selves, for it is they who are truly depraved. Not equal are those who are destined for the fire and those who are destined for paradise. Those who are destined for paradise, it is they alone who shall triumph. My dear brothers and sisters, it's very critical for us to take some time to think about a principle of accountability and owning our responsibility. And it's something that impacts every aspect of our lives, both in this life and in the hereafter. The Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Kaysimun dan nafsuhu wa amali liman ba'd al-maut. That the wise person is he who reckons for himself and his work for what is after death. And this is the core of wisdom. Wisdom is not being caught up in the moment of something. Wisdom is not just a quip or something that we're able to quote. It's not just growing a long beard, but wisdom is in how we apply knowledge that we have. That's the difference. A smart man, an intelligent man, knows what to say. A wise man knows whether or not they should say it. And here the Prophet ﷺ is telling us that the wise person is the one who reckons for himself and his work for what comes after death. In other words, that we should be conscious, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, that look to what you are doing for tomorrow. And by tomorrow, it's referring to after death. What are your deeds? What's coming ahead of you? Think about it and be conscious of it. I mean, that's wisdom. The son of Umar also mentioned, he said, hold yourself accountable before you are held accountable. Weigh yourselves before you are weighed, and prepare for the biggest gathering for he whose knowledge encompasses your deeds. In other words, on the day of judgment, Allah will bring us forward, Allah will weigh our deeds, Allah will hold us accountable. So before that time comes, it's critical for us to hold ourselves accountable, for us to weigh our own deeds, because there's no way we can hide anything from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And once death has come, there's nothing else that we can do for ourselves. We can't ask for forgiveness at that point. We can't say, well, let me go out and do some more good deeds. Let me try to right these wrongs. All of that ends at our death. And there's nothing else that we're able to do for ourselves. And so we have to take that wisdom and think about it ahead of time. It means that we're holding ourselves accountable for our deeds and our actions. And it sounds simple, but too few people really stop to do this. They stop at this principle of self-accountability, which is to really check ourselves. And as Allah is telling us, if we don't do it, if we just want to continue and live oblivious, doing whatever we feel like doing, and it feels good or it didn't seem like a problem, and we just move forward in life without any sense of accountability and checking ourselves and so forth, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what happens? He causes us to forget our own souls. In other words, when we forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah causes us to forget our own self, meaning doing the good for ourselves. That we no longer become concerned with the akhirah, that we just lead a life of heedlessness where we're running out and doing whatever we feel like because we feel like it without any thought of the consequences, in particular, the consequences for our own self and then our own akhir, our own hereafter. And hence Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights very clearly, not equal are the companions of the fire and the companions of paradise. Don't think that just because you're a nice person in general, that's the qualifying mark. That you can do whatever you want, and as long as you're nice, you're good to go. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us, here's the things that we need to be doing, and we need to hold ourselves accountable to that listing, that criteria that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us. So we don't want to end up being confused over an appearance of what might seem to be the winning side, as it were, but rather understand there is a clear difference between the companions of the paradise and the companions of the hellfire. And so we need to check ourselves. We need to have that degree of accountability, that awareness of our deeds. So we see what is Allah pleased with, and are we pleased to follow those deeds? Or the weak ones, the impotent person, who basically follows their own desires, and they just put their hope in Allah without putting any effort to earn it. Understand this, that we can't just simply say, yeah, I'm going to lead my life, do whatever I want, and God is merciful, so I hope I'll end up in paradise. Right? That's impotence, because you have to put in some work to earn it. Just like you can't say, I hope someone's going to pay me and give me money, but I'm not going to do any work for it. It's a vain desire. It's not going to happen. People aren't just going to show up at your doorstep and decide to give you money. You have to put in some work and effort to make those things happen. Imam Ali radiallahu anhu said that a person should have an hour, a certain period of time each day in which nothing preoccupies him and in which he holds himself accountable and examines what he has gained for himself and what he has accumulated against himself. In this respect, the gain in deeds is greater than that of money, and the loss in deeds is greater than the loss of money. In other words, if we said, take half an hour, take 15 minutes of every day to do this deep self-reflection. Some people might say, I'm too busy. You know what? I've got a lot of things on my plate. I've got this work and that job and so forth. And so if I take out 15 minutes or half an hour from that time, I'm losing money. And what Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, is reminding us is that the benefit you gain in terms of your deeds of that time is far greater than whatever value the money would bring for you. And likewise, the loss of that, the loss of doing that reflection is much greater than the loss of money that you have from spending that time. So when you compare apples to apples, the value of spending that bit of time every day to do that self-accounting is of extreme value compared to literally anything else that you could be doing. So we need to spend that time, because being accountable means that we're owning our responsibility to make right our wrongs. It means owning our responsibility to make right our wrongs. So we think about our day and how it went, and I think, you know what? I didn't treat this person well. I didn't get this thing done that I said I was going to do. I didn't follow up. Whatever wrongs I might have done, when I hold myself accountable, I say, okay, let me check myself and see what do I need to do, and then what do I need to do to make those things right. And it's a matter of taking action. Just like if we're at work or we're at school and we've been working on something and we're not quite done yet, but the project deadline is due, we have to turn it in. We stay late. We stay up into the night. We do what it takes to get it done because that was our responsibility. We came up short on time. We thought we could get it done. We didn't. So we put in that extra time, that extra effort to make it right when we turn it in. And we do no less for our own soul. That as we live our life, we hold ourselves accountable, because only we and Allah knows what the intentions were and what the efforts were. And so we have to have our own self-imposed consequences for shortcomings. Now, I'm not talking about self-flagellation or other extreme things, but you might set certain, say, punishments for yourself. Like if you oversleep Fajr, you might tell yourself, okay, if I oversleep Fajr, the next night I'm going to be sleeping on the floor. It's hard, it's uncomfortable. And I'm not going to be sleeping so deep, but it's going to be easier for me to get it for Fajr. So I'm going to do something maybe to give myself some training. Or I might say if I'm harsh to someone, then anytime I'm harsh to somebody, I'll buy them a gift. I'll send them a gift. Or if I decide that any salah is too hasty, I go through my salah and I'm like, wow, did I even pray? And I have my own sense of, that was a pretty hasty rush salah. I'm going to make a commitment. I'm going to redo the salah and add 2 extra rak'ah of sunnah. Or if I've gossiped about someone or talked about somebody and I think, that probably wasn't right, because I'm going through my self-reflection and thinking, I was talking about them, and even though it didn't seem very gossipy at the time, it really doesn't fit in the criteria of good speech about somebody. So I'm going to give some sadaqah or some charity on that person's behalf. So again, whatever it is, as we do our self-reflection, we want to maybe come up with some means by which we hold ourselves accountable so that we make sure we're doing it. And we can do positive reinforcement as well, that we feel I focused on all of my 5 required fard salah, so I get to treat myself to some ice cream. Or if I treat everyone with excellence for a month, then I'm going to take a day off of work and just to spend it with the family, or to go do some enjoyable outdoor activity, for example. So that's the idea of holding ourselves accountable in a way that's meaningful to us and a way that's specific. So as we sit down and we measure and we evaluate, so that we're always in this process of muhasabah, of self-accounting. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر لي ولكم. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. Perhaps you've heard that expression, you reap what you sow, and it means that whatever you plant is what you get. If I plant apple seeds, I'm going to get an apple tree. If I plant cucumber seeds, I'm going to get cucumbers. So whatever it is that I'm planting, that's what I'm going to end up coming out with at the end. So it's a direct function of action and result. And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us. Of course, at the end of the day, we enter paradise by Allah's mercy, not by our works, but Allah has told us that we should be, if you will, qualifying for that Jannah by putting in the works and putting in that effort. And if we don't, then again, we reap what we sow. So if I said, who is 35 years old and has $50,000 saved? Who's 60 and has $1.3 million put away? Well, we all should, if we had understood our whole lives, this idea of you reap what you sow. Because if we had invested $100 a month since age 20, we would have those sums by now. It's not a huge amount, but diligent, regular saving, investing would ultimately grow that fund to a nice, healthy retirement fund. And so it's a principle of we do and we gain that which we put in the effort to do. So Uthman, may Allah be pleased with him, told his son that he would be asked tomorrow where he stands about Allah on 4 things. He said, your youth and how did you spend it, your life and how you consumed it, like we're doing good or evil and so forth, your money and how you earned it, and your money and how you spent it. And it's, again, this idea of knowing that we have this accountability coming. Okay, Imam Ali mentions, may Allah be pleased with him, that this is a day that has passed and will never come back. And Allah will ask you what you did in this day. Have you remembered God? Did you attain the rights of your Muslim brothers and sisters? Did you provide some relief for their grief? Or help their siblings after their death? Or if what you remembered is good, then you will thank Allah for His grace. But if what you remembered was sinful, then you should ask Allah for forgiveness and promise yourself not to commit such sins again. In other words, it's this process of how we hold ourselves accountable, that we really reflect on our day. Were we conscious of Allah during the day? Or was it just busy and filled with doing whatever chores and tasks and work that we had to do? Were we looking out for our brothers and sisters? Did we make something easy? Did we relieve some grief or some trouble or some problem for one of our brothers or sisters? If I think of someone who has passed away, have I done something for their children or for their friends? Again, what good have I done in this day? Or if I'm thinking about my day and I'm like, oh, I made this mistake, I did that thing, and I harmed this person, or I committed this haram action, or whatever mistakes and shortcomings I have, then as I think about that, I say, you know what? I can't get the day back, but let me now ask Allah for forgiveness. Let me make a commitment to myself not to return to that mistake. And if it was some harm that needs to be made up, let me make a commitment to make up that harm to whoever it is. And this becomes the essence of what I want us to really focus and take away today, which is that we have to own our own responsibilities in whatever shape or form. And so, two key ways to know that we're not doing that. Number one, if you feel like a victim. Anytime you're feeling, oh, what poor me, what can I do? I'm helpless, there's nothing I can do about it. When we're feeling like a victim, then we are failing to pick up responsibility. Victims don't own their responsibility. It doesn't mean that bad things haven't happened. It doesn't mean that somebody didn't cause you harm. That may have happened. But if you're feeling like, oh, I'm so helpless and there's nothing I can do about it, that sense of being a victim, that means you're not owning responsibility. And the second aspect is if you're blaming other people, if you're persecuting others, but this idea of blaming, it's your fault. I wouldn't have had to hit you if you didn't make me mad. I wouldn't have had to, steal that if people had just been more kind to me. I wouldn't have had to do this if this. Anytime we're blaming other people for our behavior and our actions, we're not owning responsibility. We're trying to push our responsibility off on other people. It's your fault that these things happen to me. That's pushing away our responsibility. And so these are two immediate ways that we can kind of check ourselves and see, am I feeling like a victim in anything? Am I blaming anybody in anything? Because that means I'm not owning my responsibility. And that kind of rounds out our review of our personal day. What went on with me? Where was I good? Where was I bad? Was I blaming? Was I feeling like a victim? Because all of those things indicate that we haven't owned responsibility, and then we need to own that responsibility. What can I do? What was my part in whatever it was? Yeah, maybe someone did something bad to me, and then so I did something bad back to them. But I can't blame them because my responsibility is to treat people well. And this is one of the most beautiful things about the Prophet, right? That he always owned his responsibility. And as we perhaps may all know the story of the most difficult day of the Prophet, which is the day of Ta'if, when he went to the leaders of Ta'if to see if they would be willing to support the Muslims. And not only do they refuse him, but they send the children to chase him out of town, throwing stones and so forth. And he said that was his most challenging and difficult day. And in that moment, what is his response? Self-accountability. He makes that famous dua where he says, Ya Allah, if you are pleased with me, then I can bear anything. But if you're not, then let me know. In other words, he's checking himself. Okay, it was a horrible thing that the people of Ta'if chased him out like that. But his first response is, you know what, let me own my responsibility. Am I doing everything right? Am I in a good place? And if I'm doing everything right, and he checks with himself with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah is telling him, go out, give this message. So his first thing is, Ya Allah, if you're pleased with me, I'm okay, I'm doing things right, then I'm good. I can handle anything. And that's self-accountability. Now, we're not prophets, of course, but we should still strive our utmost in the moment of duress to own responsibility and check ourselves and see where we're at. And then, if nothing else, at least at the end of the day, we spend that time in self-accountability reflecting. What did I do? How did I treat people? What did I spend my money on today? What was the quality of my worship? Will I be pleased to find those deeds in my grave when I die? And how will I fix those things that I didn't like the answer to? What is the action that I'm going to take to rectify my mistakes, to make up for any bad I did, or maybe to reward myself for the good so that I make sure that I keep on and have a good habit of self-accountability and owning my own responsibility. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant all of us goodness and ability and awareness to hold ourselves accountable. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase us in goodness, protect us from any mistakes and harms, We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to always continue to put us in a state of self-rectification so that none of us die except in the state of Islam, that He counts us amongst the shaheed and raises us amongst the righteous and grants us shade on that day when there is no other shade but the shade. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
جزاك الله خير.
Wa yakum inshallah.